Welcome back to Prepare to Read, where myself, Marcos, and my good friend Jacob guide each other on our first read-throughs of our favorite book series. Currently, we are reading Brandon Sanderson's Way of Kings, where Jacob is a first-time reader. And this week, we are diving deep into chapters... What chapters are we reading? 26 through 29.
There you go. Nailed it. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing good. I'm excited to talk about this. We're finally wrapping up part 2.
Yeah, it feels like we've been in here for a fat minute. Big fat minute.
Yeah, I think the next part is pretty chunky too, but I think the last 2 parts are fairly quick.
I've taken a peek at what characters we get for the next part too, so I don't know if that's cheating or not, but we're back to Shallan and Kaladin.
Yeah, our funny girl.
Yeah, don't say it like that. Don't say it like that.
Thank you for the new subscribers. We hit a pretty big first milestone of passing 50. We're at 51. So thank you for joining us. And we also had a comment from one of our faithful watchers, Rosemary. So Rosemary had a question for you, Jacob. Mm-hmm. You mentioned that you take notes and highlight as you read, but do you annotate in your books or otherwise?
No, this is the first time that I'm doing that. I usually don't take notes. Every now and then, if a quote hits me hard, I'll make note of it somewhere, because I usually have a journal of some kind that I have. But yeah, this is the first time I'm doing it, and it's pretty minimal. It's mostly just thoughts and never too long. But I keep it in my notebook. I've never been a big fan of annotating my books. I know a lot of people do that. Maybe this will make me want to do it more. But it's just because of the pace that we're going at that I feel like I have to, or I'm going to forget stuff that's happened before, or my thoughts. So not typically, and that's all pretty much I do. What about you, Marcos? Have you ever annotated stuff before?
No, I don't annotate. Maybe I should. I think as we continue to go on. Also, I think it's different because I'm reading the books a second time. So yeah. I don't need to write down as much, even though, as our viewers point out all the time, I remember nothing about these books.
Yeah, who wrote the letters, Marcos?
I do know that because somebody told me. I didn't know before that. I don't know if it actually was explicitly said. I think they said it was inferred, or Sanderson said it in an interview. I don't remember, though.
Speaking of the letters... Oh, wait, actually, I have a question. I have a question for the listeners and or viewers, I guess, however you want to identify them. Which other fantasy series are you guys big fans of? I know me and Marcos are huge A Song of Ice and Fire fans, and he reads Red Rising, but I'm curious what you guys are into.
Well, I finished Red Rising, and that's the series I've been telling Jacob I think I would like to do after Way of Kings. But I'm also thinking of reading another series called Sun Eater, which I've heard great things about from the BookTube people. So I might be starting that one. I'm finishing up Salem's Lot here in a couple days, so I might start that one after.
Yeah, I'm currently reading this one, and then of course we're going about 3 to 5 chapters a week, so I can usually knock those out in a day. And then the other times that I'm reading The Secret Life of Addie LaRue. So far, so good, but I've just started it. I'm 100 pages in. And that's fantasy, but a different type of fantasy. Mm-hmm. It's a very fairy tale fantasy, if that makes sense.
Okay, well, you ready to jump into the chapters?
Yes, and I'm going to, so I made a Word document where I put all the little sections before the chapter starts all together, because in my opinion, I think this is the start of each chapter is part of the same missive, the same letter. So I'm going to go ahead and read it all, and I have thoughts. All right.
But before you read it, this is one of the ones that when I read it, I was like, wow, that really caught my attention. The intro for chapter 26.
Oh, yeah. I think that's the one where he's I'm being chased, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I have thoughts, but okay. Old friend, I hope this missive finds you well. though as you are now essentially immortal, I would guess that wellness on your part is something of a given. I realize that you are probably still angry. That is pleasant to know, much as your perpetual health. I have come to rely upon your dissatisfaction with me. It is one of the Cosmere's great constants, I should think. Let me first assure you that the element is quite safe. I have found a good home for it. I protect its safety like I protect my own skin, you might say. You do not agree with my quest. I understand that, so much as it is possible to understand someone with whom I disagree so completely. Might I be quite frank? Before you ask why I was so concerned, it is for the following reason. Ati was once a kind and generous man, and you saw what became of him. Race, on the other hand, was among the most loathsome, crafty, and dangerous individuals I had ever met. He holds the most frightening and terrible of all the shards. Ponder on that for a time, you old reptile, and tell me if your insistence on non-intervention holds firm, because I assure you, Race will not be similarly inhibited. One need only look at the aftermath of his brief visit to Cell to see proof of what I say. In case you have turned a blind eye to that disaster, know that Aona and Sky are both dead, and that which held has been splintered, presumably to prevent anyone from rising up to challenge Race. You have accused me of arrogance in my quest. You have accused me of perpetuating my grudge against Race and Bavadin. Both accusations are true. Neither point makes the things I have written to you here untrue. I am being chased. Your friends of the 17th Shard, I suspect. I believe they're still lost, following a false trail I left for them. They'll be happier that way. I doubt they have any inkling what to do with me should they actually catch me. If anything I have said makes a glimmer of sense to you, I trust that you call them off. Or maybe you could astound me and ask them to do something productive for once. For I have never been dedicated to a more important purpose, and the very pillars of the sky will shake with the results of our war here. I ask again, support me. Do not stand aside and let disaster consume more lives. I have never begged you for something before, old friend. I do so now. Whoa. I think there's a lot in there.
That's cool, hearing them read out one after another.
There's a lot in there, I think. Like, one, all right. This, I broke him up into paragraphs, so whatever. But when he starts talking about this guy, Race, and I'm assuming he's the one that holds the most, what is it?
The most dangerous shard.
Yeah. Holds the most dangerous shard. And then it sounds like, well, like, they killed two people who, I don't know, like they had something that could be used against them, and it's been splintered. So it's like, is Race our big baddie? Is that the big guy? But then we hear of Race and Bavadin.
Bombadil?
Yeah, Bahalzebub. Yeah, so we hear about them. So that, I feel like that gives me, I think maybe last episode or 2 episodes ago, I was kind of talking about, like, I don't really know who our chess players are. Like, I think we see, I feel like Dalinar and Kaladin are kind of like the pawns right now. Like, we see them, but I don't know who's making these moves, And I feel like these names that are being dropped here are the people who are making the moves. And, like, when he starts talking about the war that we're having, it's like, what war? What war is going on? It's not the Alethi war, I'm pretty sure, because, like, we don't know any of these people that are being name dropped, and I feel like we would. And then the third paragraph I have starts with, might be making a little prediction here. I'm being chased. Your friends of the 17th Shard. I believe they're still lost, following a false trail I left for them. I think these are the people that were looking for somebody in the interlude, the first interlude we saw. That's the only person we know that's being, like,
They're looking for somebody.
Yeah, hunting somebody right now.
They were looking for Hoyd.
Hoyd was the guy. So I'm like, is this letter from Hoyd? We don't know who it's to, but maybe it's from Hoyd. I don't know who Hoyd is. I didn't go back to see if any of the heralds' names were Hoyd or not, but I don't think they were, if I remember correctly. But yeah, that's what I got out of that. I think it was really cool once I put together that maybe this was all like the same thing. You know, for whatever reason, I thought it was like completely different things coming up each time. So I was thinking
like Gandalf in the library when he's piecing together everything.
Yeah, and then I run back and I have to throw it in the fire. A little bit, yeah. It was kind of cool to put everything together and then be like, wait a minute. This is all one thing. Because I thought it was like every time something would happen, I'd be like, okay, is this relating to this chapter here? But like it's like another layer, right? And I think it's kind of crazy because it's above the text that we read that has the plot, and maybe this is the story that's happening, you know, from the outside. So interesting, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, no. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I did not piece that together. I think when I read it, I don't remember how long ago I read it, this book, but hearing them all read out like that, I agree with you. It's almost like, okay, this is big picture story, and then the chapters we're reading are more like the personal story,
right?
Which is kind of interesting. Some of the names that you dropped, like race, I might get killed for this.
Oh,
I don't know who that is. I don't know if I should know who that is.
You don't say that out loud.
I know. It's just my thing. I don't remember stuff. So, yeah, but it's a different perspective knowing that they're one story, or it's one letter that we're reading. It makes me a little curious of, are we going to get a different letter going into part 3? Or is it just going to be a continuation? Was part 1 its own letter and part 2 a different letter?
Part 1 wasn't letters. Part 1 had the death rattles, I think, is what someone called them.
So each part's giving us like a different thing, a different story almost.
Yeah, because like part 1 was like those people who it was like, it sounded like they were being observed, right? And it was like, recorded on the blah, 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 blah. And then this one is this, which definitely I feel like is one person writing a letter to somebody they call old friend. And yeah, I don't know what part 3 will be. And then I also think it's a curious decision that he left out. Like there wasn't any parts of these letters added to the flashback chapters, which makes me think that this, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but that this letter happens in present time. You know, like I that's what I feel like that's telling me.
Well, besides the actual content of the letter, I think that's just a really cool thing to throw in there. I can't think of another series that has kind of this extra layer of things that are going on that add to the story that aren't directly a part of like the actual text of the story.
It reminds me of
really different.
It reminds me of Dune. Dune, I think. Does that.
Because Dune had the Empress.
Yeah, Princess Irulan. Yeah, and that's like not necessarily a different story, but like analyzing what we're reading and like a history and future tense thing, which is pretty cool.
But it's also cool that we get such different things. Like in part 1, we got the death rattles. Part 2, we're getting this letter. So now I'm a little curious, like, what is part 3?
Yeah. Well, we can only find out if we keep reading, sir. Yeah. But no, I just wanted to start with that because this stuff has been making me... I've been obsessing over this pretty much.
We could honestly, and if it's something that the listeners are interested in, we could probably do a whole episode just talking about the letters.
Probably.
Because they are so... They tie in, but they're also their own thing. So... Yeah, that could be interesting. But are you ready to jump in that chapter?
I am, sir. I am. But first...
Awesome. Okay. Okay.
I'm just kidding.
All right. So, chapter 26, Stillness. We're in the point of view of Dalinar in the Shattered Plains. And Litima, I don't know how to pronounce it, one of Dalinar's scribes, is reading to him from the Way of Kings. So he's getting his little audible time in.
Yep.
And he's kind of split brain. He's hearing all these things about the Way of Kings, but he's also still distracted thinking about the arguments that he's been having with Adolin. You know, they've been having some disagreements on what's going on. And he's trying to discern the meaning behind the Way of Kings. But Renarin starts up a conversation with him about the situation of looking at these alliances with the different high princes, because Dalinar is trying to play politics right here. He's trying to put together some type of joint bridge run and unite them, as this voice keeps on telling him. But during this conversation, it's cut short when there is a horn that goes off for a chasm fiend that was detected. And Taleb reports that it's nearby and that, hey, we should go and get this thing because it's going to increase the morale of our men, and it's also going to kind of get some brownie points with Adolin. And Dalinar kind of contests this, but then he kind of has a good leadership moment where he's kind of like, you know what? I should listen to this dude. You know, he's one of these higher up general guys. I need to listen to his ideas too. I can't just be super set on what I want. I need to acknowledge that other people can have ideas. So then they start to prepare for the Chasm Fiend assault. And while this is happening, Taleb asks Dalinar about using bridgemen. He brings up the idea of like, hey, man, Sadeas, he's throwing these guys out there. They drop the bridge. We could get across super quick. And Dalinar is pretty insistent on, no. I don't care if it'll make us faster. I don't care if it's more effective. We are not just going to throw these people out there to die, pretty much. But, again, he's trying to make other people happy and listen to them also. He says, all right, fine. We'll train a single crew, which, I don't know. It's kind of like they're dropping little things of some crossing paths here.
Well, I'm going to stop you there, right? So, like, I think... Okay, so I texted you when I was reading, and when I read that message is when I texted you that I think Dalinar is going to die in this book. Now, I may be wrong, right? Like, it's a pretty bold prediction. I don't know if Sanderson is the type of author to, like, kill off people, you know, like that. I feel like...
Yeah.
But I say that because I really feel like he's going against... Like, when he agreed to that, like, all right... Like, he's going against what he stands for, you know? And it was really interesting to me to see that. I really feel like he's, in a way, given up, you know? Like,
really?
He's like,
I saw it more as him accepting the morality of the people he's leading and acknowledging, look, these high princes, these generals, they think different than me. If I want to convince them of my way of doing things, I have to acknowledge their side also.
Yeah, but then what is he debating in the next chapter of him? He's like thinking of stepping down. Like, I think this was the beginning of the end of him leading them, because he's like, you know what? All right. Like, he started loosening up.
I can't do this.
Yeah, like he started loosening up on what he was trying to fight for. Like, you know, he didn't think that chasing these gem hearts was the right thing to do. And now he's like, you know what, we will go chase one. Then he's like, you know, we'll never use a bridge crew because, like, why are we going and just sacrificing men like that for no good reason? And now he's like, all right, we'll do one. And
yeah,
in a way, I'm disappointed in him. I feel like he's quitting. And in my mind, the reason I texted you, he's gonna die, is because I've heard this thrown out before. I forgot. I think when I was deep into Game of Thrones and watching videos on it. But it's like, in a way, like a character death. Like the Dalinar that we were reading, and like who was very, like maybe other people thought he wasn't driven as he used to be. Like he was attached to different things now, and he was trying to follow that code. And now I feel like he's just gonna wash his hands and be like, I'm just done. Like, it's not gonna work. Failed, go for it. And I think he's given up.
Yeah, I agree, and I think this section of this chapter ties in really well with the next Dalinar chapter we're going to talk about, where it's very introspective. He's challenging the way he thinks. Like, am I the person that should be leading these people? The things that they want, I don't agree with. Also, am I mentally there? He's even questioning that. Like, maybe I'm just not fit to do this anymore.
Yeah, I think he could, I don't know, do more. I really feel like it. I feel like he's still...
You think he still has something in him?
Well, just like, he's trying to go about it in such a cute way, if that makes sense. Like, oh, I gotta politic it. I gotta get these people. And instead, sometimes I just feel like
he needs to be the black
just doing it. Yeah, not the Blackthorn, because he drops it. He was like a warmonger.
Yeah.
So maybe not that guy, but just with that like confidence, you know, like he's lost his confidence, and like I mean, you can keep going on because I think we're gonna have more stuff that shows up.
But it's such a cool. This is okay. I really like Sanderson's style of writing, and I think it's a little different than some other authors in that he writes in a way that's so like visual. Like every chapter, I read it and I'm like, dude, that's an episode of a show right there. Like I can picture the sets, where they are, the interactions, and ever since you mentioned John or Josh Brolin, I forgot.
Yeah, Josh Brolin.
Dude, that's all I can picture in my head when I think of Dalinar.
Yeah.
And just like this older guy that used to be like this warmonger who's just like trying his hardest to not be who he used to be, pretty much. And I think that character being played by the actor is just such a good visual, because if you don't know who we're talking about, it's the sword trainer in the new Dune movies. Have you seen it?
He's also Thanos. A little more niche, but you know.
Yeah. But yeah, just like he has this darkness of like who he used to be, and he's just so the opposite of that right now. And I can't imagine how people look at him, because they're like, dude, you used to be this warmonger, hardcore dude, and now you're turning into like this pacifist. And yeah, he's a very interesting character. I do really like, I don't know if you'd call it a trope, but like the older dude that's past his prime. That like he used to be this very significant, strong-minded like war dude, and now he's having to take on a different role. It kind of reminds me a little bit, entirely different character, but I think a little bit of similarity with, gosh darn it, what's the name of the king in Game of Thrones?
Robert Baratheon?
Yeah, of like, he used to be this war dude, like he could go and get done what he needed to get done, and now he's having to play king. And he would tell Ned, like, I hate this. Like, I have to play king. It's not what I want. I know Dalinar is not like Baratheon, but similar of like, he can't go about things the way he used to, or he doesn't want to go about things the way he used to. So,
yeah, I think it would be more. I don't feel like he's changing roles. I feel like he's giving up. You know. Also, it makes me think too. Like, if the Alethi were so proud of this warmonger, like brutal guy, and then like we even talk about
brutal.
Where, like someone tells him, I don't know if it's Sadeas later in the chapter, where he's like, you know, you would have like chopped off people's heads for what I just told you. And it's just like, yeah. Damn, dude. Like, who was this guy? And like, if the Alethi were like, if this was the guy they wanted, like, who are these people? You know?
Yeah, because we do know they're a very military-centered culture.
Yeah, and it's just kind of like, damn, like I didn't understand how maybe fucked up they are, you know, until you start getting into these chapters where it's a lot more blatant about what he did.
Dude, we get some really good visuals later with like Dalinar realizing like, what the hell are we doing? Like, how did I used to stomach this stuff?
Mm-hmm. All right, continue.
All right, so from there, now we move into the actual Chasm Fiend assault. And just as they're about to march, Sadeas arrives, and he's here. He's like, we got to do this investigation. I got to pull your people. I got to start, questioning them on what's going on. And he says, I'll do it on the road. You know, as we start going, I'll do it. But Sadeas kind of starts to poke at Dalinar about his belief in the way of the kings, or the way of kings and the Alethi codes of war. He's pretty much saying, like, Dalinar's old school. You know, he's looking at this 1,000-year-old or whatever book, and that's just not how the real world works anymore. And once they reach the plateau, then Sadeas is kind of like, all right, we got the assault going on. I'll let you focus on that. So Dalinar and Adolin, they're already fully suited up in their shard plate. And we didn't mention that, but before this all happens, we get that moment where Dalinar's suiting up, and he kind of gives a little insight on like what it's like to be a shard bearer and what it feels like to put on the armor again, because I think they kind of infer he hasn't done this in a while. You know, they don't go on bridge runs or assaults. You know, he's very much been kind of on the outside. So for him to be doing this, I think his whole, they even say like the morale of everybody was like, let's go. Like, we're going out.
Yeah. So, he even does like a little skip down the hall.
Oh yeah. He has his little moment where he runs down the hall.
Yippee! Hi-ho, Silver!
Yeah. And then, so from here, Adolin and Dalinar lead the head of the assault, which, cool. But I do think it's almost like a little bit of a contrast to Kaladin, where it's like, all right, these guys are heading the assault, but they're heading the assault in shard plate with a shard blade. Compared to Kaladin, who was like, I'm going to lead, and I'm probably going to die.
I don't think that's the contrast you're supposed to make, though. Like, I get it, right? Yes. But I think what they're showing is, like, look what Sadeas does.
They both take on the leadership roles.
Yeah, like, they're out in front. Like, they're by themselves. And then once everybody can come over, you know, like, they... Mm-hmm. It's different than how Sadeas stands in the back. I think that's what they were trying to show. Like, look at how they do things. So
yeah, I can see that too. Yeah, like I understand where you're coming from for sure. But from there, pretty much we get just like an action scene. Dalinar, he has the thrill. They're killing Pershendi, and then he kind of has this moment where he snaps out of what's going on. He loses the thrill, and he's kind of just seeing all of the death that's happening around him.
Hold on, before you continue, we do learn a little bit more about the thrill too. That the thrill isn't just specific to Dalinar. I think what I've pieced together, and I might be wrong, so in the comments if it's okay to correct me without spoiling stuff, please, or Marcos if you can, but you never remember anything.
Okay, I'll filter it.
What's it called? All Alethi have the thrill. Like, it's unspoken. Like, they don't like to talk about it.
I really like that little detail about it, where it's like all the soldiers, they have it, but it's a very personal thing. Like, when they bring that up, you can even feel like they're uncomfortable. Like, why are you asking me about that, dude? Like, you don't talk about
like,
that.
Of course, but like, you know, like, you're really gonna bring that up? And it's like the way I thought of it is like in an RPG, like, or Baldur's Gate or something like that, where it's like, oh, if you're this race, like, this is your racial bonus trait. You know, like, do the Alethi
have the thrill?
Yeah, literally, like, that's what it is. That's what it reminds me of. I think that's what it is. And like, they're known for being militaristic people. And we learned when his flashback vision daydream thing that like anybody who could fight would go to where Alethkar is now. So like, has that been passed down? You know what I mean?
Well, there's one line that you just remind me of too. When all the fighting is going on, is Dalinar looks at Adolin and he describes him as like an artist with a blade who only paints in one color.
Oh,
and I was like, damn, that's pretty good, because there is a lot of Dalinar reflecting on Adolin, and I think when he sees him fighting, he's like, this is what the people want. Like, this is who should be leading them. And remind me of this, because I don't remember exactly. He snaps out of this moment when he remembers the first line of the ideal of the Radiance, which is life before death. Do you remember exactly what the context of that was?
No, I don't remember. Does he remember that?
Yeah, well, in the summary I'm looking at, it says, he remembers the first line of the ideals of the Radiance, life before death, allowing him to keep fighting. I think it had to do with when his troops started to come over and they started to fight. He was like, as much as I don't like what's going on, I need to acknowledge that it's happening right now, and I need to protect my men.
Let me see. No, he was calling himself Death. He's like, he was death itself. And then he stops.
I'm the destroyer of worlds.
Basically, Oppenheimer. No, it doesn't say anything about the life before death.
Okay. Well, the last thing.
Oh, yes. Eventually, it does. But he already like snaps out of it before that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the last thing that comes out, that's kind of the little nugget at the end, is that while Dalinar's kind of reflecting on everything that happened, he notices that there's a Parshendi shard bearer standing off in the distance who arrived late. And Dalinar's confused, like, why is there a shard bearer and why did they come now? Why didn't they come to the fight? And then I believe they just walk away. And
did he come late? You know, that's what I was wondering. Like, was he actually late or was he watching?
Yeah.
So
what do you think about that? I think that's an definitely an interesting thing that there's this Parshendi shard bearer. I think it's the first time they're even mentioned to have shard bearers.
No, they do because we learned, like, you know, he's like, oh, if I get a shard, I'll give it to my son Renarin or whatever. You know what I mean? Okay. So we knew that. They didn't always know that they had shard bearers, but they found out. But we knew that. I think it's just more so. What it does for me is like it just he's continuing to show that like we don't know who these Parshendi really are. You know, I think that's all it is. Is like we don't understand their motives. We don't understand why they grow armor off their body. You know, Brandon Sanderson really likes like crustaceans. He's really into that stuff for some reason, man. It's like 99% of like the enemy variety here is like, you know, whatever carapace, bug, lobster things.
Same with a lot of the wildlife.
Yeah,
but we'll touch back on the Parshendi in the upcoming chapters, I think.
Yeah, but no, I'm saying like when he sees them, it's. I didn't think that he got there late. I think that's a lot more mysterious of like, like why?
Like why is he just looming over watching us?
Yeah, like I don't think the Parshendi like necessarily. I don't know. I think they have a bigger like game that they're going for, and the Alethi are not aware of what it is at all.
Well, these 3 chapters, I think, definitely fed us some Parshendi info that we haven't been getting. Like they're starting to drop little things of like, who are these people?
Peeling back the layers. Yeah, I think we even get a little bit of like when they first found them, right, in the last chapter, which we can talk about. So, yeah, I mean, there's more than meets the eye to them, which I think is, like, we knew that was going to happen, you know?
Yeah. Okay, so...
Oh, are you wrapping up? Because I have some stuff on this chapter.
Go for it.
So... I wanted to talk more about things that like stuck with me. I feel like I've been very speculative, but there was a quote. There was a quote that really hit with me. Back to the leadership stuff, but it's when he's listening to The Way of Kings, and the quote is, "To be given loyalty is to be infused like a gemstone, to be granted the frightful license to destroy not only oneself but all within one's care." And I was like, damn, that's deep, man. That's deep. Simple, but it's deep. And I feel like, I don't know, I feel like we keep getting the contrast between how Dalinar does it and then how Kaladin does it. And how Dalinar does it and Kaladin does it. And in my opinion, Dalinar's reading it and he's not doing it. Like, he's not listening. And I feel like Kaladin is. Dalinar is
I think Dalinar is more... He wants to do it.
He wants to, but he's too concerned about like the societal. Like he tries not to care about it, but he does.
He lets it go a little in his upcoming chapter, though, where he's like, "Screw it! Like I'm gonna live out what I'm supposed to do."
But what is like? Is he really supposed to go back to his farm and just be a farmer? Is that really what he's meant to do?
No, that's not the part I'm talking about.
Oh. Well, then I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh no, I'm talking. We'll get when we get there. I'll talk about it.
But yeah, no,
because now we're skipping chapter.
Great quote. Well, I do feel like the chapters are starting, in my opinion, to tie in more together. And yeah, and again, very internal stuff going on in these chapters here. Very introspective, not very like again. We're fighting the Parshendi. We know we're fighting the Parshendi, but like, what's actually going on? Obviously, there's more than meets the eye. And Marcos, I want you to talk here about what we were talking about yesterday, which we usually don't talk about the stuff beforehand, but we just got going and didn't stop. About like, you know, I was saying, hey, we're 500 something pages into this book, and I feel like it's a bit slow, not in a bad way, but in the sense that like in most big books, like I get it, epic fantasy, it's going to be a journey, but you have insight to like what the series is going to be about, even if you don't necessarily know it completely. And in this one, I feel like Sanderson's played it so close to the chest. But you brought up a great point, and I'd like you to talk about that.
Yeah, so up to this point, compared to other series where, like Jacob said, you kind of have an idea of the overarching big picture story. Like, oh, you got to take the ring. Or in Wheel of Time, like, okay, you're going to have to fight the big baddie.
Yeah, Dragon Reborn.
You know what the big picture is. And a lot of times you also have some type of master type character. Like you have Moraine or you have Gandalf who are teaching the main crew about what is really going on. And I think where this series differs is that we don't have that character, at least right now, that is kind of explaining this world to them and what needs to happen, how things need to be done. And so it's not necessarily that we're being told things slowly, deliberately, but our characters themselves don't know what's happening. And we're kind of uncovering the big picture as they're uncovering the big picture.
No, you know who I think is uncovering the big picture?
Who?
Yasna.
Yeah, because of that chapter we get, huh?
Yep.
That you're like, yeah, she's the one that's really figuring out what's happening.
I've always thought it, we've talked about it too. Like, they call her a heretic, and we know why people get called heretics now when they start, preaching and stuff that's like taught in the Way of Kings. They're like, oh, that's when they went like against the church, guys. We can't do that. I think that was such a great insight of like, we don't have that person that's guiding us through, they're teaching,
and we need them. Even Dalinar acknowledges, like, I need you to come here because I need your like assistance.
Yeah,
and Yasna's like, no, I can't, not yet.
It's more important. She knows it's more important. I like her character, and we've spent maybe 10 pages with her. I like her character,
and you could see some similarities with her and her mom, a little bit.
Yeah.
Wait, no, is it her mom? Navani's her mom. Yeah.
Yeah. A little bit. But yeah,
a little bit of her mom.
No. I see some characteristics, but not a whole lot. I guess they're a little bit unfiltered, you could say. Is the vibe I get from both of them.
I think they're just more analytical.
Yeah, not quick to just believe.
But that's kind of what women are portrayed as in this book, though. They're the engineers. They're the. So I guess they're acting more like what they should. But they both kind of break out of the typical molds of like Navani is always pushing those boundaries of like what is okay and what's not, and Yasna is a heretic. So they're both kind of not completely conforming to.
Navani
standards.
Pushes, I think, the boundaries so far that we've seen in the societal way, whereas Yasna, I feel like, was asking questions about the ideology, if that makes sense, and she got branded a heretic, So, all right.
She's more like religious, breaks out of the religious norm.
Dude, she said like history and philosophy were the most important things to study. And what's the one book that's both of those things? The Way of Kings.
Uh-huh.
So.
Well, one thing I wanted to throw in before we move on is kind of another pro for Sanderson. I think he writes the philosophy stuff really well. I think he could write those one-liner philosophy type things in like a really cringy way, or a way that you're like, he's just trying to be overly philosophic. But I think he does a really good job with it, where like it feels very natural. You read it and you're like, man, that's true. Like that, that's words to live by right there.
Well, it's very baked in, if that makes sense. Like there is a section in Game of Thrones, or I'm sorry, A Song of Ice and Fire, and I want to say it's the 4th book, where they kind of just like stumble upon like a preacher or pastor of some sorts that's like after a battle, and then he just goes on like this monologue of like how they fight wars for people they don't know, and it felt like very like just shoehorned in there, where like, hey, the Way of Kings is an ancient book that like was used to decide our way of life before, like it's built in, if that makes sense.
And it ties into the themes of the book.
It does, at least so far.
Yeah. But moving on, because this is our one Kaladin chapter, and then we could come back to Dalinar and Yasna and all them. Chapter 27, Chasm Duty. So we're back with Kaladin, and we're in Sadeas's war camp. Kaladin has luckily been able to get Rock and Teth to join him in training. They're kind of his two sidekicks right now that are actually somewhat listening to him. And earlier they went on a ridge run. There was no casualties because they arrived before the Parshendi did. And but apparently Sadeas lost anyway on this bridge run. So that's just a little side note. But from there, Kaladin, he takes this knobweed sap, and he takes it to the apothecary that he had been purchasing some supplies from earlier. And pretty much he walks in, he drops the thing on the counter and is like, I want you to sell this to me. And the guy's like, bro, that's not worth anything. And he's like, what the hell do you mean? Like, you told me this stuff was worth all this money. And then Syl kind of chimes him in a little of like, hey, this guy, he's acting a little weird. I don't think he's being honest. And from there, Kaladin kind of uncovers this thing that's going on where like the apothecaries are pretty much creating a higher price for the knobweed sap so that they can sell it to the army to make money. And Kaladin's like, all right, I don't know how I feel about that because of the way my dad raised me and money and medicine, like medicine should be free. But he also acknowledges whatever's going on here, there's a lot of money. There's a lot of money going on through here, and I need to be careful because if I try to push this too far, like I could get killed for this type of thing. But he ends up coming to a agreement with the apothecary of like, hey, I will bring you the knobweed sap. You buy it from me directly. Yeah. So, do you have anything you wanted to say on that section?
I don't love the knobweed stuff. It feels very side quest to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know if it's ever going to tie into anything, but I'm kind of like, I'm telling you, I said it last time, it reminds me of like, you get to the first city in the game and they're like, hey, these 5 people need help. Can you go see what they need? And one of them's the merchant that's like, can you get my supplies for me? I don't have any. And then you go and get it. Like, that's what it feels like to me. So.
Yeah. I mean, maybe it's just these books are gigantic, you know, so they're not going to be the most concise. But it just feels like a moment of, all right, you're going to get a little bit more about Kaladin, see how he handles the situation, and yeah, it's just a bit more. You're getting a bit more of like the day-to-day, what's happening.
So I haven't watched any like, you know, YouTube videos on this stuff, right? But I remember when I was reading Name of the Wind, people really didn't like Quoth because they felt like, or some people didn't, I guess, when I was watching reviews and stuff. They felt like he was good at everything. Do you feel like Kaladin's good at everything? Because I think I do a little bit.
I don't know. I think he's been good at the things he's tried to be good at. But I think we've been given context to why he's good at those things. Like the medicine stuff, why he was a good soldier, why he has an idea of how to be a leader. But the leadership stuff, it doesn't seem like he was straight up good at it. It seems more like he is figuring it out as he goes. Yeah. And I think we will get some mistakes soon also. But where Kaladin's kind of, not downfall, but what he's not good at, I guess, is he struggles a lot, like, mentally, I think. With, like, finding... He's, like, overly obsessive about protecting these people, about making sure they're all safe, making sure they're all alive. So that, I would say, is kind of the thing he's not good at, is processing the things that are the bad things that could happen. Like, he wants to control everything and make sure everybody's okay and he can save everybody. Yeah, and maybe we just haven't gotten to the point yet where we're going to see his flaw. But it's kind of cool that the flaw is not just apparent, like just thrown or shoehorned in there just for like, oh, look at what Kaladin is bad at. I think it's a little bit more layered than that, where because of the way he's handling himself, we're going to see something happen later that's going to show his flaw. That he's not as perfect as he seems right now.
Yeah, because like, not that I don't like Kaladin. I think I do like Kaladin. It's just sometimes I'm like, yeah, this he's got it all, man. He's got it all. And like, he literally... I
mean, he is
like,
a slave, but...
Yeah, I mean, I guess he is right now. But he did drop that I guess he killed someone with a sharp blade. I think he killed that guy that originally attacked him. So I guess it can't be Dalinar. That's what I'm guessing. I mean,
yeah.
What does he say? Like, yeah, oh, like, you could challenge a shard blade. And you're like, I tried that. Didn't work out. Doesn't work the way they tell you.
It also seems like maybe what his downfall, or not downfall, but one of his negative points is he's kind of falling a bit into the, like, I'm a leader and I need to seem perfect. Like, I'm the one that always gets up and does everything right. And he hasn't yet opened up to his guys about, like, this is where I've messed up. I don't know. But
all right. I was just curious if you thought that he was maybe a little too perfect.
Yeah. Okay, well, moving on. From there, Kaladin gets back to camp, and Gaz pretty much assigned Bridge 4 to chasm duty, which we get some context of what chasm duty is. It's pretty much jumping down into the chasms and scavenging supplies off of the people who died during the bridge runs. And it's looked at as pretty much the worst job that you could possibly be done, given as a bridge crew. And from there, we get some more context of the chasms, some descriptions of like what's like going into the chasms, how the only light is like this crack in the sky, and also some just like environmental world building, understanding like the significance of the high storms and the chasm fiends that are down there, and how if a high storm starts, like you're basically dead if you're down there.
Yeah, it reminded me of like the Badlands. I forget where they're at. South Dakota, I think, Wyoming, where you can go and hike in them, but like if there's a flash flood, you're a goner, bro. You're toast. Like that's it.
Yeah. So
I wish.
Well, all that's.
I'm sorry. I wish we would have stuck here more. I wish something would have happened here. I was ready for like I love in fantasy. I think Wheel of Time kicked this off for me, but when we get a little more spooky of stuff going on, like I thought that's what was going to happen in this chapter. Like they were going to start getting hunted by something that's around here, but it didn't. Because I thought the environment was really cool, very unique. I really got to give him kudos on most of his environments here. They're not the stereotypical fantasy environments, and I wanted to spend more time here.
Yeah. No, yeah, he definitely took a different angle with this chapter, because from there it becomes more of a Kaladin
team
building on his leadership even more. Yeah. So he's talking with Rock and Teft, and I kind of like the way this is done. He starts to see that like there's other people around him who are seeing what's happening between Rock, Teft, and Kaladin. And the description that was given, I think it was something like they were drawn like an insect to a flame, like to warmth. Mm-hmm. And the people could feel that, and we mainly see that through a new character, Dunny.
Yeah,
who really shy, kind of being attracted to that warmth of like companionship or brotherhood. I don't know what you would want to call it at this point, but he starts to kind of come on over. Yeah, and Kaladin catches on to that. He's kind of like, all right, I could see that these people want that, and I also like the way Kaladin did it. Where, I don't know, it just felt very natural. Like, he noticed that he was there, and he's just kind of like, what do you think, Dunny? And even Dunny's kind of like, oh, what? Like, you're talking to me? Like, you care to talk to me? And, yeah, once again, just the writing of Kaladin's leadership, top tier. I texted Jacob, I was like, I'd run a bridge for this dude. So.
Yeah, he's, I think, like I'm telling you, it's a clinic on how to get a team on, you know, like with you, and I mean he does it even more.
Yeah, and he's taking his time with it, but I feel like he's taking his time to where like he's earning these moments.
Sanderson or Kaladin?
Both of them. The way that Kaladin's written, it earns these moments of like it feels organic that they're becoming a team.
Definitely, it definitely does feel very organic.
Yeah. So anything you want to say on that before this next scene?
No, because my thoughts are more on the end, I guess, or the next couple parts.
Yeah. So from here, we start to get an idea of some opposition, which is through Moash. And I think he even says the other, like besides Rock, Teft, and Dunny, like the other people are still kind of looking at Kaladin like, bro, just stop. Like, stop what you're doing. You're not all that great. And this is kind of all led by a character, Moash, who's kind of seen as Kaladin's like biggest opposer in this situation. And he starts to just kind of make fun of Kaladin. And I think he even says like that this is something that, I don't know, the other members of the bridge like fall into. It's just kind of like talking down to them, to like the other members of the bridge crew whenever they try to do anything. Like, oh, why are you doing that? It's a waste of time. Like, look at this guy. He doesn't realize that the situation we're in. And Kaladin finds a spear. And while all this is going on, Kaladin pretty much gives a little demonstration to them, I guess.
This part, and I gotta say, man. I'll continue. I'll give you my thought after.
I wonder if you feel the same way as me. Yeah, and pretty much after that, everybody just kind of like left seeing him, and they're like, "Oh wow, he really is like a soldier or whatever."
He does a little karate demonstration.
Yeah, and this is one of the only parts I have a feeling you probably felt the same way. I didn't love the way it was done.
No, this is like, it was cringe. Actually, I will say, like, even when they describe it, and it's like, oh man, I've never seen someone spin the shaft that fast before, or whatever it is. It's like he didn't even fight anybody. You know,
yeah.
Like
I get what he was going for. Fine, but it's
I don't think that was the best way to show that he had. Like, I think, again, this is where I thought we were going, is like he was going to find the spear and he was going to have to defend them from something. And I think that would have been like, oh shit, like you didn't just run, you know? Like you put yourself and like, you know, made it okay to like help us.
I agree. I don't think this was the best way to do it, but I think it needed to be done, that he showed everybody like, I am what I said I was.
Yeah, but it was still cringy. It was cringy. Execution was not. I can't imagine, right? Like if I'm at work, right, and someone told me like, oh man, like I used to fix machines all the time, you know, like that, right? Like, and he goes over, grabs a wrench, and like starts spinning it. Like I'm just gonna be like, what is this guy doing? You know, like I was been like, it's like people dancing in public. Like nobody ever loves that. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Or if I told somebody like I used to do taekwondo when I was younger.
Yeah, and then you do your you do your K kick. Like what are they gonna do? You know? I did not vibe with that part. That was pretty cheesy. And then what I think was like so beautiful, man, so beautiful. But
the one thing.
Yeah, I know what you're gonna say. Go for it.
Okay, I was gonna say the one thing that I did like, I wouldn't say like, but I was like, okay, that feels normal. And maybe if it was written a little more to lean into this, honestly, he could have even had a funny moment here, where like one of the people was like, what the hell is he doing?
Yeah.
Why is he doing that? But they acknowledged that they saw Syl, like zipping around him, and that was fine. That was cool. Yeah,
that was interesting. I don't think Syl is a wind spren. I think she's something else. Maybe she's a dancing spren. So when people dance, you know, she comes up. But I think she's got something else going on. And like, you know, with all the other spren, like, okay, spren are phenomena, right, in this world. Are they always there, and they only become seen when like their little thing that they like stand for is there? So like maybe, you know, she's always there, but then now Kaladin did something that like triggered her, like the rot spren, like they come about. Like, are they always there and you just can't see them because they're not, quote, activated or something?
Yeah.
So I think that's what was going on, like some sort of different.
Because him doing his little spear demonstration, I do find a little awkward and cringe, and I don't see how that would like sell the rest of the bridge crew on following him. But if I was on that bridge crew and I saw that this guy was like summoning stuff around him and glowing, I'm pretty sure that would catch my attention. I'm like, whoa,
yeah, like
there's
different.
Something up with this dude.
Yeah. And people already know it because, like, with Rock tells him, like, I would have died if I were where you were. Like, for some reason, every arrow missed you. Like, I think people already notice, like, he doesn't die. So he does have that mystique, maybe. But, like, that's not really talked about too much, So
yeah.
it is just,
I wish it leaned more on that than it, like, almost if it even was from the perspective of the other people. But that's not style. He's mainly in Kaladin's head, so.
Yeah. So he danced.
But
he danced for them.
Yeah. But this next part was probably my favorite part of the chapter. Like, this is one of the parts that was simple, but I don't know. The word I would use to describe is almost like heartwarming.
Aww.
Was when they're walking after the chasm duty, and he pretty much like tells Rock, like, hey, dude, I have a plan. I have a plan for getting these guys on board. And Rock is like, what is your plan? And he says it involves you. And they pretty much go, and Kaladin drops like a bunch of money on getting a cooking pot. And like, it seems so small, like it's just a cooking pot. But Kaladin's plan of how to use it was just like, man, it's the same with like when he got Donnie to join them, where he just like very organically added him into the conversation. And where now he's like, what's going to bring them together is food. We're going to make food for everybody.
If you have ever been in charge of like people or like a leader on a team, the magic of food. Like, people always make jokes about like, oh, pizza parties, but like, you share food with people and that means something. Like, in every culture, it always is something. Food and music, like, that is just primary needs.
And you get both of that here.
Yeah.
Because remember, Dunny sings.
Yeah.
And Rock likes singing, and he ends up being like, oh yeah, sing.
So like, it's real. Like, it's a real thing. Like, I'm pretty sure, some of you have had to have like had teams under you or something, and that like, hey, like sharing.
There's always a potluck, or come over to the house, we're having a cookout,
and like, it's a big deal to like, what they call it, like, break bread with people. You know what I mean? It is a sign of community. Like, they are becoming a community and a team where they weren't before. So like, and
especially with how the people are feeling in this moment, like a lot of them are like starving and all of that. So I don't think he wrote it, but totally could see like one of those scenes of like, I'm surprised he didn't look at somebody and they were like crying and they were just like, dude, I haven't had food, like good food that like somebody made. It reminds me of Band of Brothers. I don't know if you remember those scenes where like they would be actually eating food and everybody was like, dude, this is awesome. So
I don't like how quickly he cut away from this though. He like does like share some stories, man. Like, let's do it. Like, let's get cozy.
And then they start singing together.
But they don't. I don't think he goes deep enough into it. Like, I wanted to stay there and like really, like, hear people
feel it with them.
Yeah, and I feel like he went by it too fast. That's like my only complaint, because I do really like that, because it resonated with me. Like, I don't know. Like, I think food's a big part of our culture. Like, as it is everybody's, but like, it's just real, like inviting people over to cookouts and stuff. Like, I don't know, it's a big deal, especially like, I think moving, right? Like, you can tell when someone's an outsider and it's like, come eat lunch with us. Like, that means something, Yeah.
And you even get that perspective. I think it was from Kaladin. He noticed that like the other bridge crews saw.
Yeah.
And they're kind of looking at him. Like, how do you think the other bridge crews feel seeing this?
I want to be at that one. That's what I would think.
I think it's like a mix of I want that, but also since I'm not there, I'm gonna like talk crap about it.
Oh yeah.
I don't know.
Everybody's always.
But yeah, I really like this moment. I think this moment was like Kaladin even acknowledges it. Like, I think I got them.
Yeah.
Like, I think I just about have them.
Yeah, they're mine.
But he does acknowledge I don't have all of them just yet. But he says like everybody, including Moash, was eating. Like, I am winning them over.
Yep.
But it ends with him also acknowledging like that it needs to count for something, though. And I told Jacob when we talked on the phone, I think we're building up to something happening.
Whoa. You think or you know?
I don't know. I don't remember. So, but the reason why the Bridge crew never wanted to do this type of, like, never grew closer, never talked to each other, never socialized, was because people die. And the effects that would have on, like, their psyche of, I grew close to this dude and he just died. Yeah. So I'm curious, are we going to get something like that and see how it affects the crew because of what's been happening?
Knowing your morality is like a big thing, though. You know, you got to appreciate that. Like, you can't let life stop because of that. So
but that's not where these people are right now.
Yeah, but
I think these people like are hanging on by a thread.
They are, but he also talks about too,
strengthening it.
Like, you know, you got to fight or like to care while you're fighting. Like, what is it? Like, don't fight without caring. Like, what do you care about while you fight? And I think they're finding that, right? They're going to care for each other. I think that's the point that's trying to make.
But I hope we get that moment of, because Kaladin, I would say, as of right now, is kind of the stronger one emotionally, like where he's at. He's in a better headspace than a lot of them. Where if all of them are shaken by something happening, he has that moment of like, nah, it's gonna happen, but we need to continue fighting. Like, we can't let that stop us. So.
Well, now, to go back to my quote that I brought up in the previous chapter, to be given loyalty is to be infused like a gemstone, to be granted the frightful license to destroy not only oneself, but all within one's care. And he's been given that. That's what he has now. Mm-hmm. And
yeah,
it's just real, man.
That's so much pressure, too.
That's real. That's life.
Yeah.
Start having to care for people. Like, it's not just about you anymore. It's cool. Mm-hmm. But he's been a leader before, you know? Like, he's been in this situation.
Yeah. I also really like Rock. Even though he's like, some of the things about him are just kind of random or weird, but I don't know. He makes me kind of chuckle at times. Like when he does his, like his name, my name is Utulukutigi. And it's like, what are you talking about?
Onomatopoeia.
Yeah, but he says what he feels. You know, I like him. I think he's a cool guy. A cool character.
I don't dislike them, but they're definitely side characters to me right now, you know? Like, I think I need to spend a little bit more time with them. And I have appreciated how, like, we've really gone even from, like, we know more names of the Bridge crew now than we as readers did before. So I think it's getting there. It's just, you know, they're still relatively new characters, so.
Yeah.
But no, good chapter overall, I think. We learn a lot. We learned, like, when we start learning about the Parshendi and their armor grows out of them. They're more, you know, Sanderson, big bug guy, I guess. I don't know. Insect crab man.
And also Kaladin notices some of the culture in their gear. Because he says, like, oh, the Parshmen are very simple. They just serve. They're seen as these, like, they don't have culture. They don't have identity. But in seeing, like, the weaponry that these people use, Kaladin says, like, how can we say these people don't have that? You know, like, they have art, they have drawings on their weapons and their armor. Like, these people, there's way more to them than we've acknowledged.
Yep. Surprise. So,
yeah, so pretty cool little findings there.
Yeah. I'm ready to learn more about the Parshendi. You know, like, I didn't love in Wheel of Time how little we got of, I forget the people that Rand's, like, technically a part of. You know what I mean? Like, I know eventually you're going to tell me about them. Like, it's a big fantasy trope, right? Like, wildlings in Game of Thrones, those people in Wheel of Time, Parshendi here. Like, I know you're going to tell me about them, so, like, do we need to do this dance of, like, oh, they're barbarians? They're probably not going to be barbarians. You know what I mean? Like, every time it's like we get this a lot. Or, like, mix it up a little bit, you know? Like,
yeah.
But
cool. Well, moving on. Chapter 28, Decision. We're back with Dalinar and Adolin. And Adolin and Dalinar are watching a demonstration of a new bridge design for bridgemen. And this is where they pretty much use trolls to draw bridges and get them over instead of using bridgemen. And it seems like it's way slower. And people even poke fun at, like, dude, this takes forever. We have to wait for these trolls. It's like not very effective. And while this is all happening, Adolin gets into a discussion with his father, talking about how the Alethi will never fully leave the Shattered Plains. And if that happens,
Adolin
what is going to happen?
or Dalinar telling him?
Right here it just says they get into a discussion. I think it is Dalinar telling Adolin, though.
Yeah.
He's kind of talking about, like, the bigger picture of this war. Like, right now we see this war, we're fighting for these gem hearts, but we're not thinking ahead. Like, what is going to happen later? These gem hearts are, like, the most valuable thing. If we keep harvesting them, what is that going to lead to? So Dalinar, he's asking the bigger questions, you know, whereas everybody's so set on, like, the fight and the war and the thrill. Dalinar's a bit more thinking about the people as a whole. So then from there, they move to question all of the men that Sadeas was questioning, and all of them are pretty much saying, like, nah, we didn't tell him anything. We didn't tell him anything, boss. We don't care what he came at us for. Like, we're not going to tell him anything. And Dalinar's kind of like, gosh darn it. Like, they're almost a little too, they're a little too loyal here.
Yeah.
Like, they're kind of making me look guilty.
Yeah, that's literally what they're like, damn, like, we look guilty now because of them.
Yeah. Which is funny, like, hearing their description, and they're like, nah, man, I didn't tell them anything. They can't get anything out of me.
Yeah, one guy straight up like, fuck Sadeas. And Dalinar's like, yo, he's a bright lord. He had dark eyes.
And then from there, we start getting into kind of one of the big parts of this chapter is Dalinar is trying to evaluate Adolin. As, is Adolin ready to take over? And he tells Adolin, like, hey, come with me on these inspections. Like, we're going to go check out their uniforms and just seeing how does Adolin handle these things. Which is a reoccurring theme throughout the chapter. But from there, Dalinar, he tells Adolin, like, hey, go handle these inspections. And then he goes about through, I guess it's like the little town. And he realizes that there is a latrine being built. And he pretty much, he brought up something earlier that, like, we have these shard plate and the shard blades, and all we use them for is war. Like, there's these people who are working so hard to do these things, and by giving them this stuff, it would help their life so much more, but we don't do that. And considering the way that these shard plates and blades are seen, like, they're seen as these holy relics, it's definitely not looked at fondly. You know, it would not be looked at fondly by the people. They'd be like, what are you doing with that thing? Like, it is not meant for that. But Dalinar, reflecting on the Way of Kings and all the teachings, he's kind of like, nah, man, like, I need to do, like, I who cares what society thinks? I'm going to do what I think is right. And he pretty much goes on and helps them with building these latrines.
I don't think he's going to help them, though. I think he's going to, like, clear his head. You know what I mean?
Oh, and also he doesn't help them. He tells them,
yeah,
go take a break.
Go away. Like, he just wanted to be alone.
But he does acknowledge that line of Way of Kings of, like, the leader is like the servant of all. The greatest leader is the lowest of them all because he serves all of them. Something like that. And yeah, you get a cool moment of, like, Dalinar kind of stepping out of the societal norm and being like, I'm going to do what the teachings say. And he does say, like you said, he clears his head. He feels better. He's like, yeah, this is good. I'm doing something with my hands. And Navani comes over and
Navani,
says, like,
mommy.
Hey, bro. Yeah, and it's kind of like, you missed your appointment, Dalinar. And you do get a little moment of like the cultural norms here. I forgot exactly what it was, but it was something like, if he missed the appointment, he has to, like, obey what she asks or something. Like, he owes her something because he did not show up for the appointment.
Yeah, his honor behooved him.
Yeah. And from there, she also tells Dalinar, like, hey, the span read, you're getting a call from Yasna. And she kind of uses her "you owe me" card here and says, like, hey, I want to join you in that conversation because I haven't talked to my daughter in a while. Mm-hmm. And before they actually leave to go and handle the span read situation, the Bonnie kind of showing, again, how, like, she's very blunt. And it makes Dalinar very uncomfortable. Straight up asked him, like, do you know why I picked your brother? And I was like, dang, dude, that's kind of that is really blunt to be like, you know why I married your brother and not you?
Yeah.
But she tells him, like, you scared me. And it also gives a little bit of insight of who he was during the Blackthorn times. But, like, yeah, like, you scared me, and you were too intense. Like, I couldn't see myself being with you. But I think she also acknowledges that he's different now.
Yeah. A little too different,
yeah, like
though.
Yeah.
I don't think she was too happy when he was like, I'm gonna get rid of my title. She's like, you
yeah. She
idiot.
says, like, you're stupid.
Yeah.
And again, it shows Navani's insight into that side of things over Dalinar's. Which I think we're getting there, where she's gonna kind of tell him. Because right now he's been reflecting on this stepping down thing, but he hasn't come to a complete.
He did.
Or no, I think he does. Yeah, he decides he is going to do it. But it hasn't happened yet. So from there, pretty much they go to handle the span read situation, and Adolin has this new girl named Danlin, and Dalinar's kind of like, what the hell are you doing? Like, who is this? Like, you're recording this other girl. Yeah, and Adolin's just like, bro, I don't know. They're just always here. They're always around me. And it's pretty funny because I was listening to the audiobook, and they describe Danlin as having, like, this really low, seductive voice. And that's, like, the thing that Adolin is into. For some reason, that's just something he likes. And it's funny because the author, whenever he talks in Danlin's voice, it's, like, this really seductive, deep voice. And
what I was hearing in my head was, like, a Marilyn Monroe type voice. You know what I mean? That's what I was hearing in my head.
Yeah, it was kind of funny, and I think Dalinar even is, like, kind of thrown for a loop with it, where he's kind of like, don't talk like this to me, you know.
And we also hear too, like, Dalinar's like, it's the first day she's here, and he starts thinking, like, is she a spy? Like, that thought crosses his mind. He thinks about that.
Well, I do like this next part. So the span reads, I think this is the first time they're, like, really explained what the span read is. But it's pretty much like these two pens that are connected to each other, right? And, like, what one person writes on one end comes out of the other end, pretty much. And Dalinar and Yasna have, like, this, like, you can tell they understand a bit the secrecy of things, where she asks him, like, oh, are you doing well, or something. They have, like, a secret code for acknowledging, like, hey, there are people in the room, things spread, keep it like, somewhat sensitive, which I thought was a cool little addition to Yasna, of, like, Yasna's careful, you know, she's careful, she considers that information can affect things very significantly.
Well, and also what it tells me too is, like, they're close, like, they're closer than him and Elokar. He doesn't have that relationship with him, and he has it with her.
Yeah. So from here, this is the kind of the big moment of this chapter, was we get into this recollection of the first meeting with the Parshendi. And Yasna asked him, like, did the Parshendi have any shard blades when we first met them? And Dalinar's kind of like, no, they didn't. And she also asked, did they ever mention Voidbringers? And from there, Yasna's kind of a little secretive of, like, what she really knows, because she knows there's other people in the room. But the span read starts to draw out what the Voidbringers were visualized as in these texts that she's reading. And I thought this was a really cool little nod to Shallan, who we haven't gotten at all, where she's like, I have my ward, and she's a really good artist. I was like, hey, Shallan, like, she's still there, she still exists. And it kind of adds a little bit to, like, Shallan's also learning these things then. Like, she is there with Yasna while they're uncovering this information. And when she draws out what these Voidbringers look like, they look like chasm fiends. And Dalinar's kind of like, huh, like, what does that mean? And he kind of throws it around of like, maybe that's just all they could, like, that's the best visualization they can give for describing what a Voidbringer was.
Yeah, but then he also says, like, or someone, him or Adolin or whoever, is like, didn't we just discover these things? Like, you know, like in the Shattered Plains, like, he's like, isn't this new?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's something going on here. Chasm Fiends, Voidbringers, pretty sure the Shard Blades. So they're kind of introducing this mystery that Jasna is trying to uncover.
And then Jasna's pretty, like, she's like, I don't think this is actually a Voidbringer, right? Like, you talked about that. And I think that's interesting. Like, even, like, okay, is that true? Is it not? And then if it is true, like, aren't Voidbringers the sign of a desolation? Which I think, like, I would guess that a desolation's coming up, you know what I mean? Because it's how the...
Well, because Dalinar saw those smoke creatures, and I believe they called them Voidbringers.
No. Those are, like, Midnight Essence or some shit like that.
Oh, Midnight Essence, yeah.
Get it right. Different things.
Yeah, I forgot again.
They don't know who sent those out.
So there's Voidbringers and there's Midnight Essence.
And there's Parshendi.
And Chasm Fiends.
And Chasm Fiends. And Krem.
Yeah, so a lot of things that are being introduced but have not connected yet. And then Dalinar is basically like, Jasna, can you come? We need to do this. And Jasna's like, nah, man, what I'm doing right now is way more important. I need to figure this out, but I am coming eventually. So
if... Had Jasna seen a Chasm Fiend before?
No, because she says, like, I need to look at one of these. Can you get me one?
But then, like, how...
Because when I visit, I need to evaluate it.
My thought would be, like, how did she know to call Dalinar about it?
Well, probably because she knows he's a high prince on the Shattered Plains, and
but she didn't
hunt Chasm Fiends.
But she didn't know what a Chasm Fiend looked like.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just like, what's going on there? Does she know and she was pretending that she didn't?
Maybe she's seen like pictures of them, you know?
Maybe.
But they're a relatively new thing, so Jasna might have just been like, hey, I think this is a Chasm Fiend, no? And Dalinar's like, yeah, that kind of does look like one. And she's saying, well, I gotta take a closer look when I get there.
She won't get there. She's not gonna get there. It's not gonna happen.
But besides that, just the last note to close up the chapter was pretty much Navani talks to Dalinar alone. Ooh. And he pretty much tells her, we've already touched a little bit on this, but hey, I'm gonna step down. And Navani's like, bro, don't do that. And yeah, I mean, that closes out part 2, those chapters.
You also, so Jasna tells Dalinar in the little thing, because he doesn't know that, or Jasna doesn't know that she's in the room while he's, like, I guess, reading it. And she tells him, like, send my mother my respect. Keep her at arm's length, uncle. She bites.
Oh, yeah.
So...
Yeah, Dalinar's kind of like, oh...
Was that, like, a joke, or was that, like, you know, legit, like, hey, stay away, you know?
I think it's an interesting dynamic. I don't... Yeah, it's so interesting, this whole, like, him being into his brother's widow and the social implications of that, and, like, hey, I chose you for these reasons.
And he's really got it for her, too, because he can't even look at her.
Yeah, he definitely makes...
It's easier to talk
him into, like,
a
little kid.
Yeah, man, he's tripping over his words.
He's even noticing that safe hand. He's like, oh, she has her safe hand.
Yeah.
Dude, that's another thing that I'll give Sanderson a pro, is like the whole safe hand thing is like he's building up this thing that's like, in our culture, who gives a crap, you know, like that's not a thing, but he's really driving home how big of a deal it is in this culture, where it's like, dude, that's a very personal thing.
Shallan basically called everybody who exposed theirs whores, so
yeah, like it's a very personal thing. And yeah, he does a really good job of the world building, to where like we're able to really feel, we're able to like understand when a social boundary is being crossed in a way that if it wasn't built up, it would mean nothing to us. So
we also find out a little bit more about Jasna, and that she was a very Alien. The big mouthful right
What?
there. Yeah. Alien is what happened. I don't know. It's tough. It's one of those.
Oh, it's like she's a part of a type of
it's
society type thing.
Order of scholars who try to find the truth in the past. Truth in the past. What does that tell you? The past that's being told now is a lie.
Yeah.
So, interesting.
So basically, when Yasna shows up, it's gonna be pretty big because she's coming with some info.
That she's not gonna show up. She's not showing up. She's not gonna make it. She ain't gonna make it. We know that other people want stuff from her, and one of them's name is Shallan.
So, oh yeah, there's that whole dynamic of like Shallan's trying to rip this girl off almost, but we haven't gotten Shallan lately, like at all. So
But
we
we
really
will.
don't know where she is in her headspace right now.
Well, it
But
sounds
so I
like-
had a question with you
Okay.
for you. Since we finished out part 2, which great job, we actually did all of part 2 straight through.
We did.
How do you feel about this book? Because we try to limit our conversations to just the podcast, so that way we have things to talk about. I haven't gotten a feeling of you like really loving the book. I feel like you talk about it and you like the podcast and the dynamic, the discussion, the deep dive, but the book itself, if you were not reading it in the context of this podcast, like how do you feel about it?
So, what I would say is the plot of Way of Kings, I am intrigued and I like it. I like Dalinar a lot, actually. I know I don't. Like, I shit on him more than I shit on Kaladin, but I feel like Dalinar is a lot more of an interesting character. Because, like I said, I do feel like Kaladin's a little too perfect. Like, he does no wrong in my eyes, I guess. So, like, seeing Dalinar struggle, like, really, like, he is not doing a good job. It reminds me a lot of watching Ned Stark fail. When you, like, this guy, like, he's a good guy, and he's not doing it, you know? Like, he's just not doing it. He's giving up on himself, you know? So I think characters-wise, I like them. I like what Kaladin... I like Kaladin's plot, I think, more than I enjoy Kaladin right now. Because, like I said, I need some stuff, a little more going on with him as far as, like he is finding himself, but I don't know. I have mixed feelings on Kaladin so far, but overall, I like him. The plot itself, like I said, I'm enjoying it. My biggest concern is like the big picture. Like I need a little bit more because I haven't read every fantasy book out here, but like I said with the Parshendi, where it's like it's pretty tropey of like that alienated people who live in a certain inhospitable place and. You know, they're very barbaric, and then you find out, oh no, they're actually not barbaric. They're very deep and like cultured people. Like I know that, like that's, you know what I mean? Like that's it's old ground that we're retreading, and sometimes it gets stale. But yeah, like I think what I need this book to do is throw that little carrot in front of me of like I think Game of Thrones is good with like right off the bat you get that scene with like the whites and the others and stuff like that, and it's like whoa, like there's just a little cherry, you know, just a little bit, and it kept me going. Or like Wheel of Time, when you get like the Pot on Fane stuff, that's like I know this is bigger picture stuff, but like you're giving me just enough to like like I gotta find out what that's about. I feel like this did a little bit with like that one chapter with the Midnight Essence, but even like Way of Kings, I'm kind of like, all right, I'm at the point now where I would say about halfway through the book. I need the pin to drop on something. You know, we've built up a lot. Like stuff I think is gonna soon have to start paying off in a way. You know, like Dalinar being unable to get the people to like side with him. Like I want consequences to that. And I'm not saying Brandon Sanderson's not gonna give them. I think that's where I'm at. I need to see like, all right, I appreciated the build-up. I didn't dislike the build-up. I liked it. It's fun to talk about. Lots of speculation that I can do. But with this build-up, like the payoff needs to be proportionate, if that makes sense. And I think that's what's going to determine how much I enjoy this book, is if that landing like if that payoff is there or not. Which, from what you tell me, I'm expecting it to be there.
I think it ties into the pros and cons of the format that you're reading the book, because we're doing it through a podcast. You're reading 2-3 chapters a week. If you weren't reading this with the podcast, you probably would have read parts 1 and 2 in like a couple of weeks.
This still almost 600 pages though.
Yeah,
like,
but it would have been different if you had read it much more condensed than spreading it out as far as we are. Because I remember you gushed way more about Wheel of Time than you have this. But I don't know if it's just because we're doing it in a podcast. We are discussing it in a different way than we used to discuss Wheel of Time.
I didn't get hooked on Wheel of Time until book 2, though. Like, book 2, The Great Hunt, like, that's awesome. That's an awesome book. And it doesn't do any, like, it just goes, man. It starts, and, like, maybe the second book of this one will be like that, too. Like, I know we're still in the early stages of this series. I just need a little bit more. Like, I want to know more. I told you yesterday, he's keeping a lot of stuff close to the chest, and it's like, okay, like, that builds hype for me because I'm enjoying this. But if it's not worth the hype that you're being very secretive about, I'll be like, man, like, it took all that time and that's what it is. Like, you could have just told me. So that's how I feel. Like, I overall, like, if I were to give it a rating right now, I'd give it like an 8 out of 10 right now. Maybe 7.5, around there. Because there are parts, something that has taken me completely by surprise in this book is how introspective it is and how personal these stories with Dalinar and Kaladin are. Where I thought it was going to be very, epic, and we're jumping around between characters constantly, and it's like this huge story all at once. But like, no, like so it's like maybe a double-edged sword there, where he's taking his time building up Kaladin, building up Dalinar, in a way that I wasn't expecting, and I appreciate that. So I really do enjoy that aspect of it. I think the thing is like if we started learning more about Yasna, I think I would really like her character. I think I would really like Shallan's character. Like, Kaladin's cool, but Kaladin is also not cookie cutter, but like, I would say more typical of a hero, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, the best way I could describe, I think, the series up to this point is that saying, the journey before destination. It's like, this series is a journey. It definitely is. You're uncovering things, you're learning things with the characters, and to me, I think it pays off. I do. But I don't know. You have to see for yourself. So.
Does it pay off in this book?
There are some big payoffs. At least for me, there was some moments that I loved. But, I mean, it is an epic series. You're not going to get everything.
Would you say that, like, some of the moments you loved, like, is there a moment that you were expecting me to enjoy more than maybe I did, or that I talked about?
I don't know. We talked about this offline, where it was, you've been a lot more analytical about the book than you have been emotional. Mm-hmm. Being just like, I liked that, I loved that, or this moment made me excited, this moment made me like a little sad. So I don't know. Usually when we talk, it's a little bit more analytical, a little bit more lore discussion than it is just you being emotional about how you feel about the book. So I don't know. That's how come I asked the question, because I was like, I don't know how Jacob feels about this. I've heard him gush about other stuff or talk about how good other things are, and I haven't really heard him have those conversations about this series.
Yeah, and I think that does come with doing the podcast too, where like I am thinking of it in a different way. Like, I'm not just taking it as it comes, if that makes sense. But no, like, I am excited. Like, each time we finish a podcast, I'm like, all right, cool, I got 3 more chapters I can read. Like, I like, cool.
Yeah.
Like, I am excited about reading it. I enjoy it. I've come to like Sanderson has a different style, I think, than like some other authors, obviously, and like I'm starting to understand his style, I think, a little bit more. So it took a while to get used to for me, and now it's not that he's like very different or anything, but the way he writes like action and like his descriptions and stuff, it's very clear and not left up to interpretation, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So no, like I'm enjoying it. I don't think anything's really been like a oof. Like I really don't like that. I think the only thing I could complain about is like pace. You know, I think there was some things in part 1 that were like just broken up really weird, so it felt like things were taking way longer than it needed to take. Whereas part 2, I don't have that complaint. You know, I think most of the time you get like, hey, here's 3 Kaladin chapters, and like that take place over like a decent chunk of time, and then go back to Dalinar, and you hear this stuff about Dalinar, and
and so. I've told you the same. Part 1 of this book did not hook me. Like I read part 1 of this book probably like 2 or 3 times. Then I got to part 2, and I was like, all right, I'm getting into this now. And then part 3 from then on, it was like I read every book, like one after another.
Yeah.
From there.
And then to touch on what you said about like the emotional impact, I don't know if this book has gone for emotional impact yet. You know?
But it's setting it up.
It is with like, I can see it with like Kaladin and stuff, you know? But like, I feel like I think of Name of the Wind, where it is trying to hit hard on certain spots, like really, 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 like it's doing a lot. It's a very
emotionally driven book.
Yes, like when his parents die and like that whole section that is just like, it feels like a depressing slog to get through those, you know? And like, you feel it. Whereas this, like, I don't think necessarily is going for those feelings. Like even when Kaladin was like down in the dumps and almost commit suicide, like I think that was what, maybe over the course of maybe 3 chapters, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And then like in terms of like time in the story, I think like maybe a couple weeks, you know, not even. So, you know, you just like, it didn't hit that hard, but also like I don't feel like it was invested in to hit that hard either. So we'll see. Yeah. Like we'll see how stuff plays out. I am very interested in what happens with Dalinar, because I really thought he was going to be able to unite them, and now I'm like, it sounds like this dude's like packing up his bags, man. Like, yeah, something's going to have to happen to him for him to like stay and do what he needs to do. It's not going to come from him anymore, is how I feel.
And also now I think we're going to get a little bit of Shallan.
Yes, sir. Actually, we only get Shallan and Kaladin in this next part. So we're not even going to find out what happens to Dalinar.
Our boy, Big D, we're not going to get any of him.
No.
I love Dalinar. I really like his story. Dang, dude, it's a good thing and a bad thing. Mainly because of how long it's going to take us to get through to the next part. But also it's a good thing, because I think it's going to leave us wanting to get back to Dalinar. Like, what is he going to do? Where is he going to go? Give us the big D. Yeah. But Shallan also, I think she's a little bit more of an immediately interesting character, in that, like, we have a very immediate direction for her. You know, like, she is trying to steal from Yasna. She's using Yasna.
And if she's a part of, like, uncovering secrets, like, I'm going to love that. I know I'm going to love that. I liked her character, too, where, like, she's not a goody two-shoe, you know? Like, I know we always joke about her saying she's funny, and she's kind of not, but, like, she is not, I guess, completely morally correct. Like, you know, we get Dalinar's honor, you know? And then, like, Kaladin, who's, like, really trying to be, like, a great leader. And, like, Shallan's just like, hey, man, I just got to steal this thing for my family.
She's a survivor. Yeah, she's like, I'm just trying to survive.
We know her brother's like, brother ain't all, like, you know, like, do we want her family to be okay? I don't know.
There's some trauma.
Yeah, he's ripping apart crabs. Like,
because Kaladin, I don't think we have an immediate direction for him. Right now, his direction is just take care of my people.
Survive.
Survive.
It's like the Halo Reach mission.
Build some brotherhood.
Yeah, I feel like, not that I can see where Kaladin's story is going completely, but like the vessel that his story is in is a little more like, it's pretty straightforward. Like, yeah, he's in the bridge crew and he's just trying not to die. And he's trying to save other people too. Dalinar's got a lot more going on, and I think Shallan will too. Especially because, like, I think what Yasna's, like, they even bring it up where, like, Dalinar was like, a ward? She hasn't had a ward in forever, you know? So, like, what did she see in Shallan necessarily that, like, was like, damn, like, I need this girl, you know? Mm-hmm. So I'm excited to move on to the next part. Not that I didn't like this part. I enjoyed this part, I think, a lot more than I enjoyed part 1. But
For sure.
I think through Shalon we might start learning some stuff that I've been kind of itching for, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, there's so much to learn still. But yeah, so for our next episode, if you're following along, we'll cover the 3 interlude chapters.
Definitely.
And talk about that, which will be fun. And then we'll move on to part 3 from there. So, yeah. If you're still listening, this I think is probably our longest episode we've had so far. Thanks for listening. Everybody who's liked and subscribed, I hope you're enjoying this. Feel free to comment at the bottom, just your thoughts, theories, books you'd like us to cover, or other things you'd like to see on the channel. Pretty much anything. We just want to hear from you. So,
sayonara.
Take care.